The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Elie Wiesel once said, "There's a quiet kind of pain that lives in the space between parents and children. Not the kind that leaves bruises or scars, but the kind that leaves silence. It's the distance, the absence, the empty chair at the dinner table, the phone call that never comes. It's not cruelty that hurts the most, it's indifference. Because sometimes parents aren't cruel at all. They're just gone in a way that's hard to explain. They might be there physically cooking dinner, watching TV, driving you to school, but emotionally, they're somewhere else entirely. You can feel their presence, but not their warmth. You can see them, but not reach them in that quiet kind of distance. It stays with you. We grow up thinking that pain must look loud, shouting, punishment, rejection. But as Søren Kierkegaard once said, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Only when we're older do we look back and realize that the coldness, the lack of warmth, shaped us just as much as open hostility would have. There's a strange irony in all this. Parents who are distant often don't mean to be. Maybe they were raised by people who didn't know how to express love either. Maybe they were trying to survive lost in work, stress, or their own unresolved pain. Carl Jung said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents." And isn't that the truth? So many parents are still children inside, trying to figure out how to give what they never received. But for the child, for the person you became, the effect is real. You start to wonder what you did wrong. You start trying harder, being better, quieter, smaller. You learn to earn attention instead of expecting affection. You mistake silence for stability. And one day, you realize you've built your whole personality around the hope of being noticed. Oscar Wilde once wrote, "Keep love in your heart." A life without it is like a sunless garden when the flowers are dead. For many people, that sunless garden starts in childhood. A place where love existed maybe, but without warmth. Where everything was fine, but nothing was felt. And here's the truth. Distance can be more confusing than cruelty. At least cruelty tells you where you stand. Indifference leaves you guessing forever. Albert Einstein said, "It is strange to be known so universally and yet to be so lonely." That's what many children of distant parents feel, lonely in a full room. Seen but not known, heard but not understood. And yet, before we slip into blame, there's something deeper to see. Ram Dass reminds us, if you think you are enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Families are mirrors. They show us everything unresolved within us. That's not to justify the distance, but to see that the pattern often runs deep. Maybe your parents were taught that emotions are weakness. Maybe their love language was putting food on the table or working late. Maybe they thought quiet meant peace. Lao Tzu wrote, "Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner." Many parents live their whole lives imprisoned by what the world expects: success, image, respectability, and in that struggle, they forget the simple act of connection. But emotional distance has a way of echoing across generations. If you grew up feeling unseen, you might find yourself attracting people who make you feel the same way. You might become a parent yourself and wonder why you struggle to say "I love you" out loud even when you feel it deeply. The cycle repeats, not out of malice, but out of habit, out of not knowing another way. Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." When we start waking up to these patterns, it's dizzying. We realize that the distance we felt as children is something we've started to recreate in our adult lives, maybe through emotional walls, avoidance, or self-protection. It's hard to unlearn, but awareness is where healing begins. So how do we begin to heal from distant parents without becoming distant ourselves? First, we tell the truth. We stop pretending it didn't affect us. We say, "Yes, my parents weren't cruel, but they weren't there for me emotionally either." That's not betrayal, that's honesty. That's how we stop gaslighting ourselves. Second, we learn to give ourselves what we didn't get. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The moment we notice how that distance shaped us, we gain the power to choose something new. We can learn to sit with our feelings instead of pushing them away. We can learn to be gentle with the parts of us that still crave attention or approval. Third, we open the door not necessarily to reconcile, but to understand. Maybe your parents won't change. Maybe they can't. But understanding their story doesn't excuse the pain. It just helps you stop carrying all of it alone. Compassion doesn't mean condoning, it means seeing the full picture. Oscar Wilde once joked, "Children begin by loving their parents. As they grow older, they judge them. Sometimes they forgive them. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, isn't about erasing the past. It's about setting yourself free from needing it to be different, and maybe that's the ultimate lesson. To realize that love doesn't always look the way we wish it did, and yet we can learn to love more consciously because of that." Einstein said, "A human being is a part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space." He experiences himself, his thoughts, and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Maybe the distance we feel from our parents is part of that illusion, the belief that we re-separate, that love is something that must be earned. The truth is, we are all connected. We just forget. Ram Dass used to say, "We're all just walking each other home." That's what this is, really the journey back home to ourselves. To the part of us that still wants to be held, seen, and loved without conditions. And if you're listening to this and thinking, "That's me. My parents weren't cruel, they were just distant," know this. You're not broken. You adapted. You found ways to survive. You learned to be self-reliant, to read a room, to sense people's moods before they spoke. Those skills came from pain, yes, but they're also proof of your strength. Still, there comes a time when survival isn't enough. When you stop wanting to just get by and start wanting to feel. That's when the real work begins, learning to trust closeness again, to believe that love doesn't have to hurt, and that your needs aren't too much. So here's the call to action. Don't wait for your parents to change to start healing. Don't wait for an apology that might never come. Start loving yourself now. Write that letter you never sent. Say those words you never heard. Be the parent you needed. Healing is about reclaiming the present, not rewriting the past. And maybe, just maybe, when you do, that distance you grew up with starts to fade, not because they changed, but because you did. You learned that love can be chosen, created, shared. Kierkegaard said, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. So dare to love deeply, even if it scares you. Dare to connect, even if it feels unfamiliar. Dare to break the cycle. Because the world doesn't need more distant people pretending they're fine. It needs more people willing to be real. Willing to say, I'm learning to love, even though I didn't see it modeled for me. That's courage, that's growth, that's freedom. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this. Your parents' distance wasn't to proof that you were unworthy of love. It showed they just didn't know how to express it. But you can learn and choose differently. Remember, as Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. So walk home to yourself.